Cool. Cool. So, support classes. Few things before we even talk about specializations. Supporting in World vs. War means mainly applying boons to allies and cleansing conditions and healing enemy damage. Um, Healing can be either um, restoring health to allies or preventing damage through barrier or projectile disruption or any way that you can, let's say, prevent damage to reach your allies. We in any party we usually run 2 or 3 support classes. The most common one is the Firebrand that provides stability. We then have a secondary support because the primary support is the Firebrand, so the secondary would be either a Scrapper, a Tempest, a Vindicator, a Druid, a support Spellbreaker, and I think that's it, because others are more utility. The Chrono can also be considered a support class. There are builds that provide decent amount of cleanse and healing to allies. Now, each class deals with conditions and with damage in different ways. The prime example is the Scrapper. The Scrapper is like a continuous stream of Condi cleanse. So as long as the Scrapper is in play, it keeps cleansing condition by having like sort of pulsing effect on the ground that keeps the party clean. On the other hand of the spectrum, we have the Vindicator. The Vindicator, unless you press something, shit doesn't happen magically. You constantly have to press buttons to make things happen, and you also have to aim that correctly. So we have on one side probably the easiest class to play for support, which is the Scrapper. On the other side, we have the Vindicator, which probably is the hardest one to have the same amount of numbers. The Tempest has a kind of dynamic rotation, but once you get to it, it's all about applying auras, transmuting the auras, and removing conditions that way. The nice thing about the Tempest, when compared to Scrapper, is that some of the healing component is tied to the cleanse. So while you are cleansing, you're also healing. While on Scrapper, you're cleansing rather easily, but then to actually have high healing output, you have a rather complex rotation to follow. The Druid is more close to the Vindicators as complexity. It has some kind of passive utilities that can help you cleanse and heal, but the you still have to aim on the ground, and you still have to be aware of your surrounding while you're playing either Druid or Vindicator. So that is to say that, now everybody's saying that Scrapper is dead, but if you're starting with support class, I would highly suggest to start with something like Scrapper, because it's way easier to get into the mindset of supporting allies and finding your place into the support role and mindset. if you want to stay in the meta, apparently Tempest is now the best choice. So you could also pick up Tempest. In that case, you can always contact Sash, and she will be more than happy to organize a training session to get up to speed on the details of Tempest. Something else that I wanna kind of touch upon is the on the boons, specifically what we care the most as a support class are the defensive boons, which are the protection, Aegis, regen. Those are kind of the defensive boons. There is also another rather important defensive boon, which is stability, but that's a particular boon in a way that it's mostly given by Firebrands. As a secondary support, you mainly focus on the others, the other boons. But that's not only that. There are defensive boons, there are also offensive boons, and the offensive boons can make or break a squad. Sometimes you hear, it seems like you are not doing any damage. Now, there are two options. One option is that we are not feeling it, and we are simply playing as not as good as always. But another concrete option is that there are not enough offensive boons up, so our DPS classes won't be able to crit all the time. Even when they do land, the damage is not as high as they could be because maybe they're lacking might. It's possible that they are getting stuck somewhere because maybe they are lacking swiftness, for example, to keep it up. And to continue to what Izzy has just said, the goal of the support classes are to apply these boons. Obviously, the enemy will try to remove those boons. So it's always a game of reapplying boons rather than applying that once and then forget all about it. So in that regard, the Scrapper is probably the best support there is, because while it cleanses conditions, it automatically reapplies the boons, so by converting the condition rather than cleansing. Tempest, on the other hand, has a wide variety of boons that they can apply, but they're not all the boons in the game. So the coverage will be kinda low, And all our builds for secondary supports have two variants. The one is the meta variant, which is full minstrel. The other variant has a mix between cleric and magi, which is basically maximizing the healing power and trying to balance the vitality and toughness. Because cleric provides power, toughness, and healing power, and the magi is precision, vitality, and healing power. So basically, you pick toughness or vitality, and then you try to balance it. And why we are doing that? Well, there are multiple reasons. The first one is that regen, which is a boon that applies healing over time. You can have only one instance of regen, and the person with the highest healing power is the one that will override the regen. So in an effort of maintaining your regen over other healers, you want the highest highest healing power you can have. But not only that, regen usually is a large part of your healing output, and having a high healing power grants you the ability of passively healing your allies without, focusing too much on them. And you also have to consider that all your healing skills have a radius around you or around an area that you select. But regen, if someone moves out of range, the regen will still tick, and a regen can tick as high as 1k, which is quite a bit, because 1000 healing per second granted by a boon is already something. It might not save you completely, but it can allow you to move out a little bit from the group and then remerge. And that's why it's also easily removed, of course. And as these healers keep applying regen through various means, it's quite easy that the regen would be the first boon in the stack. Even considering that, the regen will still be your highest component for your healing. Yeah, so again, I talked about the various classes that you can select. Despite what the meta is shifting to, all the support classes are still viable. They all provide different things, different let's say benefits, and they have some pros and some cons. Let's say if we start with the Scarper, the pro that he has is that it can provide stability rather easily. It's super easy to play. I'm not saying it's easy to master, but it's easy to get started and do a reasonable amount of cleanse and healing. It doesn't take months to master. The Tempest it can be quite easy to start with, but it gets hard to master quite fast, because same as the Druid in that regard, it has so much versatility that you can get lost in all the potential stuff that you could do. It's not like you have to do that, but you could get lost quite easily. Like, for example, the Tempest has the ability to daze or immob. Stun or immob the enemies. But by doing that, you have to switch attunement, and switching attunement is like switching a weapon. But all your healing are in the other weapon set, so it's you're basically deciding, okay, I'm gonna stop healing and cleanse for a bit because I want to do this CC. So by doing that, you really have to know you have to be able to read the combat flow and judge, because if you fuck it up, then your party might as well die. The Druid is less punishing in that regard, because the immob in our build are tied to the weapon set, and it's also a cleanse, so you can go for it, and you might waste a cleanse, so it's not that as bad. as I said before, though, you really need to know where to place your skills, because some of them are tied to the Celestial Avatar mechanics, which is something that you enable. It lasts for like 15 seconds, and it takes roughly 10 seconds to recharge in perfect conditions. So in those 10 seconds, you don't really have access to your powerful healing. You have access to, some small healing and cleanse. You really have to manage these cooldowns effectively. Vindicator, it's really, really hard to get right. It has enormous potential. It's the class with the highest healing potential in the game. That is to say, if you manage to land all your skills with perfect timing, you're gonna out heal by 2 or 3 times the other healers. It's insane. It's also insane the amount of barrier that it can output. So while the other healers are kind of waiting for damage to be there to restore health, the Vindicator has the ability to prevent damage. It makes it possible to push through shit that you wouldn't be able to push otherwise. So that's why people are, looking at Vindicator, because it is really good, but you really need to know how to play it and where to place your skills to be effective. But the potential is very, very high. Well, I think I've done the overview I wanted to do. Do you guys have any questions about any of these classes, or curiosity, things that you would like to know?
I was wondering, we play every squad 2 support, right? Is that because it's the meta, or because we need it as a guild still? Or can it be done with 1 support class
Right.
per party?
Well, the unfortunate reality is that the Firebrand has been nerfed to a point that it cannot really sustain the party alone. And I mean, it still could, but it would be really, really hard to do that. So it's easier to make it easier to have 2 supports for to support for party. There's also a thing to be said, and it's like redundancy. So if one of the 2 supports fails and dies, you still can last a little bit. You're not at full potential. And for example, if you have a Firebrand and a Scrapper, the Firebrand dies, the Scrappers can provide a little bit of stability, maybe just enough to retreat or regroup and retry, or maybe turn the battle around. But if you had only 1 support, like for example only Vindicator as support, and it dies, that group is fucked. There is no way that you can sustain, because all the other healing provided by the other support classes will not probably reach the party in where the Vindicator is died, and that's mainly the reason why we go for the double. Not only that, but we could use other like offensive roles to do the same, but also the stability. Now I skipped Firebrand in the mix because Firebrand is quite particular in that in this world, in the sense that it needs to provide stability, but the stability that it provides has gaps into it. The Firebrand alone cannot have 100% uptime on stability in a world where CC exists and Bonestrip exists. So you need something else that provides a little bit of stability at the right times. Now,
Okay.
it could be a secondary support, but it could also be, I don't know, for example, a Spellbreaker, power Spellbreaker that is running Banner. It drops all the Revenants with the Stab Road. That's also, it doesn't need to be a secondary support that provides that, because, for example, Tempest does not provide stability. So, you need something else that provides that fills that gap. And there's another reason why, you cannot really have like one Vindicator that does it for all, because it doesn't have nearly enough stability, and then you do have like fill your party with utilities that provide stability. It'd be kind of weird.
Okay. I was just curious if that was a thing that was meta or just for us because we're still getting into it as a guild.
No, actually,
That's why often there's a lot of moments we also call for more damage. Well, we have none, so I was wondering if we could get more damage instead of support then.
Yeah,
but it's not really a thing then.
No, we can actually get more damage. And in fact, at the start, I said, there are groups that runs 2 or 3 supports. We are leaning more towards the 3 supports per party. So basically, each of our party has 1 Firebrand, 1 secondary support, and then it has a Chronomancer or a support Spellbreaker. Those are a form of secondary support as well, because they provide Condiclans, they provide stability, they provide boons to allies. They have more utility classes because they also provide CCs to kill the enemies. But that leaves us with 2 slots for the damage. And I think I wrote that in the Spellbreaker discussion that we are having. But having 2 damage per party makes puts a lot of pressure on the damage dealers, because they need to be on point. And so when we say there is not enough damage, what we actually mean, it's not like there is not enough damage, but the damage is not synchronized, or it didn't land in the same spot. So basically, how the damage works in Guild Wars 2 is that if it's AoE attack, like most of the damage in World vs. World, it's based on the number of people that you hit. If you hit like 5 people with your skill, each will get 1 hit, and it's fine. It gets absorbed quite easily. But if you have 10 wells on your feet, you get 10 ticks. So maybe you get like, I don't know, 20,000 damage in a second, and you die. You're immediately down, and that's what happens when we synchronize damage. But if you get like 1 well after a few seconds another, and a few other seconds other 2, your supports that are continuously spamming healing will pick that damage, and it will feel like your damage did nothing at all. And that's why it's important to focus the damage in this roughly in the same area at roughly the same time, so that it can all tick together and instantly down people or rather quickly. And if you notice, when we actually melt, it's not like we die a slow death. We are alive, and the next frame we are dead.
Yep, yeah, true.
Yeah, and you know why? Because otherwise, the healing output that these classes can provide, all of them, it's way, way higher than the damage that you guys can do. Like, I saw 10k healing per second from support classes, and it's hard to see 10k damage from DPS classes. I mean, you can obviously see that. I saw even higher than that, but still,
Mm.
its support classes can sustain up to that, but you cannot heal something that goes from 1% to 100 to 0. It's
No, that's just insta.
Yeah, and that's why it's also really important to have relatively high uptime of protection, because protection reduces the damage, as well as other means to reduce damage are really important for the squad, especially when we push. And that's one of the reasons why we ask Revenant to use their dwarf to reduce damage whenever they can as we push. When we go into a high damage situation.
That would actually mean that if we ever get everything synced and right
Mhm.
On a regular basis, that we could actually go with less support if we actually melt another team in such a quick time. Then, if we can actually do that, we need less support, right, or not?
Yes and no, because technically yes. I mean, okay, let's run this scenario. Imagine you're on Weaver, right? Lava Font has 8 seconds of cooldown, 10 seconds, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Let's assume that the wells on Echoes are quite longer as cooldown. So let's assume that it's all roughly 30 seconds of cooldowns, and you can synchronize in that window all your damage. You do damage, then you have to wait a little bit to redo it exactly the same. But how you're gonna wait? It's not like the enemy is gonna stare at you and do nothing, right? They will try to murder you because you just use the bomb.
Yeah, okay.
They might have lost 5-6 people, but they might still have like 15 to be able to counterattack. So you have to absorb that damage. And the higher you go in skill level, the harder it is to actually spike people like that, because a lot of it comes down to positioning. So, I know that we are talking about support, but the best support is you and yourself, because you have to be able to move together, and that reduce your damage, your incoming damage by a lot, way more than your healer can actually heal. So, moving together, moving as a group, it's a nice way to reduce damage, and that's how Pro Guild do that. They simply move together. You can get spiked, you can get downed, but if you are all together, it's also rather easy to stop, rest, move, because you are all together. It's not like you have to go around and chase people. Whenever we realize that someone is down, we are already 1200 range, and that guy is dead. Because the closer we are, less damage we get, the easier it is on the support classes. And for example, we can play more aggressive supports. It can either be like Spellbreakers running Celestial, or even full power, the secondary supports can also run Celestial, for example. It's by default, as I said before, we're running Minstrel, but or a mix of Magi and Cleric. But also the Celestial is quite viable if the squad is moving quite well, so you don't need as much. And the same goes for the Firebrand, by the way. The Firebrand can run Celestial if there is not a lot of damage going around, and they can output quite a lot of damage in burning, and they help out. And sometimes you don't even need to do like an obscene amount of damage. Sometimes even a small bit can help.
All right, clear. Thank you.
Other questions, guys? Don't be shy.
What is the reason we are running the support groups we are running? So why do we change to Tempest in the current meta? And did we ditch Scrapper?
Oh, so despite popular opinion, the reason why Scrapper was meta before the last patch, it was because, well, for three reasons mainly. The stealth was the major thing, and that got killed. The second thing is that it had quite nice access to stability, and the last part is that it's super easy to play. So all these three components all together makes it that the Scrapper was the best secondary support. Notice that I haven't said it was the best at cleansing or the best at healing. It did quite a good job, but it wasn't the best. Even before the patch, yes, even before. Now, Tempest, on the other hand, after they made the Offhand Dagger a viable weapon, it became rather quickly way better at cleansing conditions and at healing. The main issue with Tempest, though, is that it doesn't provide stability and it doesn't provide stealth. Now, neither does Scrapper anymore, so there is the stability issue that we have. Luckily for us, they are also buffed stability on other classes, so we can use, and what we are using is a couple of Tempest, because they provide so much healing and cleanse that their healing and cleanse will overflow to other parties as well. So, even if we select less powerful secondary supports, the Tempest will probably carry a little bit. So the Tempest parties will need a way to provide stability, to have stability, and that's why they are usually with Chronos or with Spellbreakers that can absorb the whole of stability. And then we are looking into Druids, because Druids is it provides the same things as the Scrapper, like gold cleanse, gold healing. It can provide stealth using the pet, so you can blast stealth. It can provide stability. And even before the patch, some parties were trying out replacing Scrappers with Druids, because Druid has a really easy access to Immob, which are really strong CC. That's the flavor that Druid brings, is like the Immob part. So, and that's why we are shifting towards that. Unless obviously we find a really good support Vindicator that I'm always up for those. But Druid is way easier to play. Tempest is a no-brainer to have at least one or two in the party to have, huge cleanse and healing. Unfortunately, squad composition is always a puzzle. So now Scrappers made it rather easy to create this squad comp, because you put a Scrapper, you have like 50% uptime on all the boons. Now without Scrappers, you have to really think about might uptime, fury uptime, and all these kind of things. Which is another reason why Druid is super nice, because you can provide fury and might quite easily. So that's another really good plus. And it has access to the obvious defensive boons as well. So, it's a natural replacement for Scrappers.
From your analysis, Shinko, that you did, how is our boon uptime looking like on these fury and might and these kinds of things?
Well, if you have a druid in your party, might and fury, you're fine with it, because at least, let's put it this way, at least on the first engage, like when it matters on the spike, you're gonna have might and fury, and you also have the stability, etc., protection, and regen quite easily. Now the issue with druid is that the reapplication is not that as guaranteed, but the cooldown lines up with wells. So every time you have wells, you have the fury and might, which is nice. Now,
Okay.
notice that on the Scrapper, which is the reason why I'm the Scrapper right now, is that the Purity of Purpose, which is the trait that converts, the Fury was on blind, and it's really, really hard condition to convert, because we're always doing stuff. So Fury was the hardest one to convert, while the easiest one was probably something useless like Vigor or Swiftness, probably. Regen. Regen is always 100% uptime. So it's not like Scrapper at 100% uptime, because blind, it's not that easy to convert. We are still trying to figure it out. Now Vigor, I know Vigor is not useless, it's quite useful, but it's not as fancy as all the other spoons. We're still trying to figure it out. How to manage Fury and Might on the Tempest parties, but we also have classes that don't really need Fury and Might. Like, if our Scourges are focused on stripping more than damage, even if the damage is slightly lower, it's not an issue, and they don't need Fury to do their job. On the other hand, like classes like Dragon Hunters, they really want their Fury, and they might have time, same as the Devil and stuff, like Weavers, for example. So, and that's another reason why we are not going with 5 Tempest or Cobalt 25, but it's more limited to a couple of Tempest and rest Druid. Is squad optimization. Any other question, guys?
No.
Only the Borderland?
Cool. Okay, Dan, I'm gonna stop the recording.